identity crisis or the feeling that we've lost the person who, in a sense, represented
Exactly.
the best of British values, and is no more.
Tina, she had 4 children,
I know.
8 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, a mother and grandmother. How did she view her role as queen?
Well, she was always able to separate her roles. That's what she was so brilliant at. I mean, she was the constitutional monarch who was always impartial. After 70 years on the throne, we do not know to this day what the Queen thought about anything. She never spoke about her political opinion. She never revealed what she was thinking. She mastered the art of the sort of, the unreadable face. We never knew what the Queen was thinking, and in public at any rate. But off duty, she was a very humorous, amusing, tart, witted figure who loved, to be made to laugh. And who also at the same time understood that her role was 2 very different things. When she was, the children always knew, the grandchildren always knew, that when they were going to see the Queen as mother, as grandmother, she was her amazing off-duty self. If you went to see her about anything that was sort of related to their official roles or their, the constitutional aspects, you were going to meet the CEO of the monarchy, you were going to meet the Queen, chairman of the board, you were going to meet the Queen with her private secretaries who were around a table. She had 2 very different identities, essentially, and she managed to keep those 2 roles separate, really. Sometimes they collided when the children's issues really kind of seeped into the wider aspects, but she really, for 70 years, she was the most remarkable executive of the crown, if you like.
With poise and grace. Tina Brown, thank you. Let's turn now to Mark Phillips, who's covered the royal family for many years. Good to see you, Mark. And as you pointed out in your beautiful piece that we showed, sort of looking back over her life, she was not supposed to be queen.
No, she wasn't. It was an accident of history, another dramatic twist in the royal family's history, of course. The abdication leading to her father becoming king, and then and her following. But as Tina was saying as well, this was a day we all knew was coming. We had all prepared for it. There are procedures and protocols in place, and yet when it happens, it's still somehow a shock. Probably because nobody can imagine a time when she wasn't queen. This 96-year-old woman, 7 decades on the throne, all of the stories, the long sagas involving her children, the marriages that came and went, all of the trouble and all of the grief lately, the sad passing of her husband less than 2 years ago, and watching this very sad decline over the past several years that was put down to what the palace kept calling mobility issues, transient mobility issues. We knew she couldn't get around much, but clearly there was something much more seriously wrong with her as well that everybody suspected, but of course wasn't talked about. But the constitutional clock ticks on here. Immediately upon the Queen's passing, her son Charles, long live the King, and one of the wishes that she had conveyed within the last couple of years ago, involving Charles's wife Camilla, immediately was given support as well, with the palace announcement that the King and the Queen consort, meaning Camilla, would be traveling down to London. So the business of state goes on. She carried on, as you would expect of her, right till the very end, performing that business of state, swearing in, accepting the resignation of an outgoing prime minister 2 days ago, and commissioning a new one to form a government. Pictures of her standing and doing it, looking frail, but doing her job. She literally died with her crown on.
Mark Phillips, thank you. We want to show you a live picture of 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister's residence and office, and we are expecting, they've just placed a podium you can see out in front, and we are expecting to hear from the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, shortly, who was one of the last people to see the Queen in person just 2 days ago. Let's bring in CBS News royal contributor and British historian Amanda Foreman. And Amanda, as we await the Prime Minister's remarks, I do want to talk to you about the Queen's place in history and her legacy. How do you see it?
Well, the Queen's place in history begins with her being the head of the Commonwealth and how she helped to steer Britain's new role in the world after World War II. The Commonwealth is still doing very well. She's still the head of state of 14 countries. There's still over 50 countries part of the Commonwealth. And she saw that very much as part of her most important duty. When she was 21, she gave a speech in which she said, "The motto of my ancestors is I serve." And that was the guiding motto for her entire life. So that's her first legacy. The second, actually, is a legacy of feminism. Now, she herself would never have used that word. Nevertheless, as a woman who carried on working, who aged until the age of 96, but showed that she was always relevant, she is the original woman who nevertheless persisted. So these two things, how to be a woman, how to be a woman in charge, how to be the CEO of the firm, as the royal family is often called in jest, set an example for women around the world. It was one of the reasons why she was so beloved. She also utilized the power of soft power incredibly well, and her legacy for future leaders as well as the royal family is how she was able to use her influence in a way that never seemed to be actually using her influence. That was extremely important. The relationship between the US and the UK has never been better, and that is very much part of her legacy. She visited America over 4 times, and each of those royal visits were a roaring success. If you look at, for example, her visit in 1976 to celebrate the bicentennial, she danced with President Ford at the White House, and there was so much jollity at the occasion that when she went onto the dance floor, the band played "The Lady is a Tramp," and that was seen as a mark of affection for her, the Queen who could do such amazing things with grace and also humour. So her relationship with the US, with Americans, has been one of her greatest legacies, that she leads a relationship that is in robust health between the two countries. And her relationship with the Obama family was in particular very warm. There were 3 visits between them, and each time you could see that the warmth between the two was growing. And so it's an extraordinary thing that a woman who was able to transcend so many generations and carry such the age of wisdom and experience with her was nevertheless able herself to keep on modernizing and changing as the times went on. In the 1980s.
It's a wonderful point, Amanda, that you make, and the length of her reign. She was alive for 14 American presidents, but met 13. She did not meet Lyndon Johnson because she was pregnant at the time. But for many Americans who are not students of British history, many of them do have subscriptions to Netflix and have watched The Crown for sure, and so they do know that Queen Elizabeth was the first royal to utilize the power of television. And in fact, her coronation in 1953 was seen by almost half the UK population. It was rebroadcast to millions more around the world, making the point that you have, that she was a global figure for decades. In 1957, the Queen marked another milestone, broadcasting the first Christmas Day speech on television. So we want to show you some of that, because in that historic address, the Queen reinforced her pledge, which was this pledge that Tina was talking about, this life of public service, to live a life devoted to the people.
I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice. But I can do something else. I can give you my heart and my devotion to these old islands and to all the people of our brotherhood of nations.
Well, let's bring back in Tina Brown, because that very point about her modernizing and living with the times and learning to adapt to television and all of the other things so that she could continue to not only represent the monarchy, but hopefully she tried to transition it into a modern age.
She really did, and people often think of the monarchy as this sort of static organisation, but what was so brilliant about the Queen was that she was always able to move that glacier, but do it with enormous judiciousness, shrewdness, and appropriateness each time. I mean, her reign begins, if you think about it, with her having to tell her sister, Princess Margaret, that she cannot marry the man she loves because he was a divorced man, he was an older man, and that was a terrible blow that had to be delivered to her sister. But then you see how things move so that now, Sir Charles was allowed eventually to marry the woman that he loved, even though she was a divorced woman. You see the way she joyfully accepted a woman of mixed race joining the family in Meghan Markle. And you see also how William and Kate were allowed to live together, before they married, which before would have been absolutely unthinkable. But the Queen understood that it couldn't again happen, that a young prince like William would not be able to really be sure about the woman he loved, because we've seen the disaster of what happened with Diana. So you see her moving these things inside the family into the kind of the mood of the country, and she's so well